Hey guys, what is going on? It's another Friday, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of No Label Live, where we talk about all things labels. Because guess what? No matter who you are, you've had labels that have defined your identity. You have labels that currently identify your who you are, and in the future, you will have labels. No matter what, we're all defined by labels. And this show is talking to people about how they've used their labels to create the life that they choose, to create freedom for themselves. So, it's April. It's National Humor Month. I didn't know that until this April, right? So, today's guest is a comedian and the creator of Palsy Positive, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong there, but we're joined by Mr. Andy Imlay. So, Andy, great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nathan. It's great to be here.
So, did I get that right? Palsy Positive.
Yeah, that's my website. That's my handle on Instagram. That's my handle on Twitter. I mean, it's pretty easy to follow me on all those platforms, except for Snapchat. I've got a little something different with Snapchat. I go by the handle Super Palsy on Snapchat. So
Okay. All right, Super Palsy. Let's start it out by me asking you this. Who is Andy Imlay?
Wow. I've never thought about it like that. First of all, I'm an advocate for people with disabilities, have been my whole life. I'm a husband. I'm a computer technician by day, part-time. I did it for I've been doing it for probably at least 20 years now, but had to slow down in the last 4 or 5 years. I'm almost 40. So, as you know, with palsy, the body's not so kind to you sometimes. So I've had to slow down a little bit and kind of rethink how I spend my time and what I do with my time. And about 5 years ago, I decided to get into stand-up comedy.
Mm. So, what changed in that at that moment 5 years ago?
Oh, there's a lot of different stuff going on. I was having a lot of back pain back then. I was having I was having trouble keeping up at work as far as the workload that they had for me, because I was on the repair side of things. So anytime anybody knows anything about IT repairs, people want things done as quickly as they can. So there was the pressure involved with that. I just went through a pretty nasty divorce about a year and a half prior to that. So a lot of things were I'd kind of hit rock bottom at that point. I had to leave my job, file for disability, hoped that I didn't need to get a lawyer to fight my Social Security disability case, as some folks have to. But I thought if there was a brain in their head, they would know that obviously I qualify. So, so it was a lot of things, a lot of negativity going on in my life at that time, and I was trying to look for a positive outlet.
And so in humor.
Yeah. I've always kind of used humor as a defense mechanism, especially in school. Anytime I'd get folks that were bullying me or mean to me, I'd try to see if I can make them laugh, because if they're laughing, they're not going to punch me in the face. So,
yeah. And what have you found as you're pursuing this new passion for comedy, making it your employment? What's been the most interesting part of this journey thus far for you?
The most interesting part is remembering that you're your own person and don't compare your journey to somebody else's. because just because they're having the level of success they're having, you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. You don't see all the other stuff that they had to go through to get there. So kind of developing as I go and understanding that if I don't get a certain opportunity, that it's just not my time yet, and to know that there's probably something better around the corner and just keep working at it.
What's got you on fire right now about your comedy career?
I was just in the Orlando Improv in October, and I got an opportunity to perform on an improv stage. And I would say I'm still riding that wave from October, man, because that was pretty huge for me. That was the biggest venue, the biggest stage. I mean, it was. Some people say it was an opportunity to be a lifetime, and I kind of took the bull by the horns. And they gave me 10 minutes on the stage, and I made the most of those 10 minutes, and submitted to my first comedy festival in Sydney, Ohio, and so I'll be traveling out to Ohio in August for my very first comedy festival. So I'm pretty excited about it, man.
Yeah, that's really big. What opens up for you when you're standing up in front of a mic and in front of an audience? Like, how do you use your story to connect with people through your humor, and do you do that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I stand up, because my act would only last probably 30 seconds if I did that. So that's the funniest part of it, is that people call it stand-up comedy, and I'm breaking down barriers by, the heck is, my computer's being weird here. I'm breaking down barriers by not being the typical norm, I guess you'd say.
You're breaking down by sitting down.
Yeah, exactly.
In stand-up comedy. Okay. And like, I've got to say it, and the people are probably noticing if they're watching, we're both in our Superman garb here. What impact does Superman have on who you are as a person? Because I see everything I see, you have something that's Superman related. Whenever I look at a post, it's usually got Superman somewhere in there.
Yeah, the passion for Superman started in 2004 when Christopher Reeve passed away, and I wanted to know more about who he was as a person, who he was after the accident, and what he did for people with spinal cord research, and just giving hope to people with disabilities in general by just being who he was. And I wanted to take that same passion and apply it to something that I'm good at, which I would hope that it's making people laugh. So I've been visiting Metropolis, Illinois for their annual Superman celebration since I found out about Metropolis in 2006. I've been attending their celebration. I actually got my first tattoo in a tattoo shop in Metropolis called Kryptonite Tattoo. And since then, my arms are now covered with Superman-related tattoos. Like I said, I attend their festival. I love it so much, I decided to propose to my now wife at the Superman statue in Metropolis. And 2 months from today, we'll celebrate our 2-year wedding anniversary, where we actually got married underneath the Superman statue in Metropolis.
So it started from Christopher Reeves. Does it now have a deeper seated meaning for you?
Yeah, like for instance, I have a tattoo of a Christopher Reeve quote on the inside of my left forearm that I read to myself daily as a reminder of who I am and what's possible. And that quote is, "A hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles." Because I'm sure, as you've probably noticed, Nathan, people like to call you an inspiration a lot. And I stop them in their tracks right there. I say, nothing that what I do is inspirational by any means. I'm living my life, trying to live the best life I can with the cards I've been dealt. I said, I'd rather you call me a hero instead of an inspiration.
Oh, wow. I definitely relate to that for sure, but I've never thought of it in that frame as being a hero. So thanks for sharing that for sure. Thinking about imagining your younger self, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell your younger self about what's possible with life now that you didn't know when you were younger?
Well, I had a lot of lonely times when I was younger because I was the only kid in the school system. You know, like I said, I'm about to turn 40, so I'm a little old school. I was the first kid ever mainstreamed into a public school in my area. So there wasn't anybody to relate to. There wasn't anybody to talk to about what I was going through or how I was feeling and that kind of thing. And that kind of ties back into Superman being an outsider, being different, not knowing how he would fit in. Again, that's how I relate to Superman. But back to your question, what would I tell my younger self? I'd tell him to keep going because there's always bigger things around the corner. Just because you think tomorrow's going to be, just because today's a bad day doesn't mean tomorrow's not going to be better. And you never know who you might be inspiring or impacting by what you're doing in your life as a ripple effect. So just make sure that you're putting on the best face you can because you never know who you might be helping by doing that.
Or in your case, put on the cape, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I've got a couple more questions. And my next question related to comedy. What was it like the first time you got on stage?
Honestly, I was terrified. I mean, I've been on camera before I've been on stages before just for disability advocacy type groups. I've done a telethon for the local Easter Seals in this area that provides services for people with disabilities. I was on their telethon back in 1988, plus again in 2017. So, I'm definitely no stranger to being up in front of people. But trying to make a room full of strangers laugh versus just sitting around with your buddies who have the same twisted, dark sense of humor that you do, it can be difficult because comedy's subjective and not everything you say is going to land in every single audience. But I knew it was something that if I worked hard enough at it, I could develop a routine that would work across the board for no matter what crowd that I get in front of. So that's why I try to tailor my material to be as family friendly as possible, because then I know I'll get booked in more places that way.
Oh, some good insight there. And how has laughter changed your life?
I always tell people this and they say I'm crazy, but when I'm up there in front of a crowd and I tell a joke and the crowd just erupts in laughter, it's a feeling you can't replace. It's an adrenaline rush, and I can honestly say when that first laugh hits, it's an addiction. It really is, and you're always trying to chase for that next big laugh. What can I say that's going to really just knock them off their feet? And I can honestly say that when I'm on stage and that laughter's going, I don't have any pain at that time because the adrenaline is just pumping so much. I mean, it's just like a singer if they would get up on stage and sing one of their, number one hits and the crowd's singing along with you and that kind of thing. If the crowd's laughing along with whatever I'm saying, that's the time when I'm on fire and it feels like, nothing can touch me.
Man, that's That's really cool. And for anybody who's never experienced it, both of us having CP, the idea of not feeling pain, I mean, that's a huge thing in and of itself.
Yeah, and I caption a lot of my pictures when I'm on stage is the only time I don't feel pain, because it's true. If things are, if this jokes are hitting like they're supposed to. Now, it's not always the case. And
Yeah.
it's not always the case that every joke works in front of every crowd, but I'd say 90% of the time the stuff that I say works, and I just enjoy it. And then I get people coming up to me after the show. I had this guy a couple months ago before I flew to Orlando saying, my brother has cerebral palsy, and what you're saying up there, I really relate to it. And, thanks for putting a humorous spin on something that can sometimes be difficult to talk about.
What would be an example of something that's difficult to talk about that you use humor to relate to others?
Stereotypes that people have with people with disabilities. They automatically think because you've got a physical ailment that you got something wrong upstairs. You know what I mean? So my Halloween costume last year, I did middle-aged Jimmy from South Park. I dressed up in the yellow shirt with the microphone, right? Put it on Twitter, tag South Park in it. It gets retweeted by South Park on their Twitter page that are 2.9 million followers. And then I get contacted by the director of marketing from Paramount Pictures wanting to know if they could send me a whole bunch of South Park merchandise. So I was like, So what I've started doing now is I've got a pretty mean Jimmy impression that I can do really well. And I'll do that whenever I first get up on stage and grab the microphone. And it shocks people because, like I said, stereotypes, right? You automatically think that's the way I talk, when in actuality, it's not how I talk at all. And then when I say, got you, just kidding, the look on people's faces, it's priceless.
Yeah, people don't know how to take it, I imagine.
No, because there's so much tension. All eyes are on me while I'm struggling to get up on said stage, because most of the time there's stairs to get up on any stage that I'm performing on. Mm-hmm. So, and it takes me a little while to get up on that stage. So the tension that's building in the room, like, what is this guy going to say when he finally gets up there? Because it's taken him a half hour. I'm kidding. It probably only takes me an extra 5 minutes, but what's this guy going to say? Mm-hmm. And I hate when comedians get up and they grab the microphone and they automatically ask the crowd how they're doing. You just blew it, man. That was your perfect opportunity to set the tone for the rest of your comedy set. And the 5 comedians before you, guess what? They've just asked that same question too. Like, it's very important that first 5 seconds you grab that microphone that you say something funny, because that's what they're expecting.
Well, powerful is that even outside of a comedian, right? Thinking about how many times we just go through life and we're repeating a script. And even for something as being also a disability advocate, you could probably say the same thing about when advocates get up and talk during rallies and things like that. Everybody starts the exact same way. Mm-hmm. So
I like my approach to be a little different because, why not?
Yeah.
I enjoy not being like everybody else,
What advantage does being different give you think?
Like I said, it gives me the opportunity to turn those stereotypes upside down that people have. My wife's able-bodied, and sometimes that throws people off. They're like, "Oh, is that your caretaker with you? Is that your personal assistant?" No, that's my wife, and she wants to be with me not because of my sweet parking spot, but because of who I am as a person. And
Man.
I just wish people could get past that. You know what I mean?
What do you think for that to happen?
There's a lot that needs to happen. I mean, we're talking square one when people put new buildings up. I mean, start thinking about people with disabilities. Are they going to be able to get in that building? Is the parking appropriate? You know, simple things, everyday things that other folks take for granted. You know, you got to think about those.
And have you ever heard or thought of the stereotype of the angry disabled person before?
Or somebody that's kind of spiteful because of the situation they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to approach everything. You can have a positive attitude about something all day long. It's harder to have a positive attitude than it is to have a negative attitude, because you can immediately point out negative things all day long. Bad news always travels faster than good news. You know, you write a bad review on a business, it's going to go viral faster than you praising that business. And you've got a choice every morning when you wake up and you get out of bed and you put your feet on the floor, Nathan. You got a choice. It's am I going to be positive today about the cards I've been dealt, or am I going to wallow in self-pity? What's going to make more of an impact?
Man, that's super powerful. So with that being said, what's the whole purpose behind Palsy Positive?
To kind of show people that there's positivity in everything if you look hard enough for it. You know, cerebral palsy is not all gloom and doom, you know.
I mean, see us, Paul.
I mean, there's things I can't do, but think about the thousands of things that I can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's something that you can do that people often assume that you can't?
Definitely not juggling. Definitely not that.
Okay.
Definitely not a 5K race or going to Sky Zone or any of that stuff. Definitely not any of that. Back in high school, I was a pretty accomplished actor and singer in drama club. So a lot of people don't know that I was an accomplished singer back then, because the internet wasn't as prevalent back then as it is now. So that's a talent of sorts that I have, and you know, I do a few impressions. You know, not a whole lot of impressions, but I do some impressions that I enjoy. Turning that stereotype on its head by doing said impressions, and then being like, no, I'm just kidding. I don't sound like that, you know.
That's awesome. What I've got one last here, and that question is, when you think of no label defines me, what does that mean to you?
A label that defines me? Is that your question?
So when you think of no label defines me, what does that mean to you?
It means that, just like it says, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory that no label can define who you are. And if you put a label on yourself, then you're basically, that basically puts a ceiling on what you can do also. And just like Superman, I mean, there's no ceiling he can't bust through. So I'm sure there's no heights I can't reach if given the perfect opportunity to do so.
Beautiful. Through the ceiling. And is there anything, you mentioned all your handles and stuff in the beginning, so we'll make sure and tag all that so that everybody can go and follow Andy, follow his journey, and check him out at a show if you're in an area where he's performing. But is there anything that you would like to share with the audience before we end today that we have not talked about?
Well, basically, like I told you when we were trading some emails before this interview happened, I basically wanted to boil down to the fact that if you can find humor in a difficult situation, no matter what that situation is in life, you win. You always win if you can find humor in it, no matter how dark your sense of humor may be, because my sense of humor can be pretty dark at times, and sometimes people don't know how to take that. But if you can laugh about a difficult situation, you've won that situation.
Yeah. I want to take this time to thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your perspective. You mentioned it. I think you are, through just being yourself and approaching things with humor, changing stereotypes, talking about them, you are creating that ripple that you talked about. And I want to acknowledge you for making that happen. And I just want to say, if anybody related to this message, you saw something and you thought that's me, make sure, leave us a comment, connect with Andy, connect with myself, and share this with somebody who needs to see this message today. And
I appreciate it, Nathan. Thanks for letting me join your platform to send out this message today. And like you said, if anybody can relate to this, definitely share it with your friends. Connect with myself at Palsy Positive on Instagram, on Twitter, Super Palsy on Snapchat, and then on my website, palsypositive.com.
yeah, everybody, go ahead and do that. And remember, like I say, if you're seeing this, you're up to big things. And when you're up to big things, you must be patient, you must be diligent, and most importantly, you must never, never quit. So make sure and check us out. We'll be back next Friday with a fresh episode of No Label Live.